perhaps the most significant aspect, I wouldn't say detail because it's far more than a detail in the film, is the way that in the 1970s, three people who were not involved with the Crickets played the Crickets' music.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about how you all decided what approach you're going to use to getting both like the mixing, the technology of the music down, the filmic ends of it, and the playing of the music itself?
Well, we felt that we were faced with a choice of two roadways, really. One would be to use the original Buddy Holly recordings.
Yeah, can you elaborate on that? Because
well,
there's been
it all
some
depended
films,
on
yeah.
it all depended on casting. I felt that if you're going to tell a story about a performer, and much of the film is going to be involved with the performance, you better get a performer up there who has gigged in front of people before, or he'll never sell it. He may play all the notes in perfect timing, his lip sync may be absolutely perfect in timing, but somewhere in some level of your mind, subconscious probably, you know it's not real. And although you may sit there and enjoy it and respond to it, it's only on a cerebral level because it's not real, it's fantasy. But if the guy is singing his own notes and playing his own guitar, and he's up there sweating, you can see the veins stand out on his neck, you can see his eyes, you can tell. And once you buy that guy up there on stage as Buddy Holly, and that he's really doing what he's supposed to be doing up there, then the rest of the movie will take care of itself.
Had you considered at all the possibility of using records?
Well,
using Buddy Holly's records?
I had always considered that to be second choice, but probable. I never dreamed that we would actually find someone who could act as well as we needed for the star and also sing. So up until we found Gary, we were always prepared to take an actor who couldn't sing and do the lip sync trip. And it would have been a different kind of film. We're really fortunate that we found Gary.
I don't know if I've ever seen a musical biography where original recordings of the artist's work were really used, and lip-synced over the original recording. Somehow it's always somebody else playing the music of...
Wasn't that Jolson's original voice, Larry Park's?
Maybe.
I think it was.
I've always thought that a problem might be like the scratches in the recordings.
It is. That is something.
Be a kind of giveaway.
A bigger problem, though, is the ambiance of the recording. They're all studio recordings done with 1950s technology, which means they're not terribly clean to begin with. And also, if you tried to use a record that was cut in a studio like this one, and your picture was in a hall with 1,000 people sitting there, again, your brain is going to tell you that sound is not coming in this building. They're not together. They're not real. And again, you'd have that separation of reality.
Speaking of the mix that was used, there was as we heard in the roller rink medley a little earlier that was played from the soundtrack, the mix of the music is very rough, just as it ought to sound, I think, because, after all, it was a rough rock and roll band in the 1950s playing in a roller rink,
Right.
But there's always that chance, you always see it in a film, that it's gorgeous, like it was, produced in like the finest state-of-the-art studio.
I think you'll find in the scenes where they're in a recording studio, though, it sounds...
sweeter, yeah.
The mix is better, the quality is better, and it's a deader sound, more of a studio sound. We wanted Buddy Holly on stage to sound like Buddy Holly sounded on stage.
I think somehow that's rare in a music film. Is that one of the reasons why you wanted to do the film independently?
Yes, we would never have been allowed to do it that way with a major.
Everybody
in Hollywood said, "You're crazy.
Why?
You don't know what you're doing. You don't know what's going to happen to you. You can't do this. Take multi-track unsprocketed tape running at 150 feet a minute and try to sync it up with sprocketed film that's running at 90 feet a minute." People said, it's too big of a headache, you can't do it. Well, that was the easiest thing for us because that's what we've been doing for almost 10 years for television. The technical complexity of that didn't faze us because we designed over the years our own system for doing that. So we had to just say to all the crew and everybody, just relax, it's going to work out fine. And it did.
Did all the people who played Buddy Holly and the Crickets, were they all formerly musicians? Was Don Stroud a percussionist? Or
No.
Did he have to learn
Well,
from
Don
film?
Stroud... Here's a funny story. Don Stroud came in to read for another part, actually. He came in to read for one of the disc jockeys. And something about his demeanor and attitude really felt like what this character should be. And we asked him if he played the drums. He said, "Oh, sure, I had a rock and roll band when I was in high school, and I played the drums." You know, actors will tell you anything. It turns out that coming from Hawaii, he was a surfer, very much into the surfing idiom, and played bongos on the beach. So he knew rhythms, and he had a pretty good set of hands on him from playing the bongos, but he'd never sat down at a set of drums. And in 8 weeks, he's practiced 8 to 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, in an empty sound stage, and actually learned to play the drums.
Some people, I'm sure, would make the argument that was time that could have been spent doing something else. You would have been better off finding someone who already played or dubbing it in or something.
Yeah. Got a lot of arguments like that.
Yeah. Well, he did a fine job in the role.
Yeah. And he's believable when he's sitting at those drums. You know he's playing. There's no possibility that he's not playing. And it's a big difference.
As the director of the film, what kind of what's like some of the advice that you gave Gary Busey, for instance, about how he should portray Holly, the facial expressions, the kind of duck walking that he would be doing on stage?
Well, a lot of Gary's movements on stage are his own. We had long discussions about the way Buddy would have behaved on stage, and going by some secondhand accounts of how he did appear. And we talked in general about the character and the way his attitude would be on stage. Gary and I come from the same part of the country, which is very close to where Buddy came from. So our views of his personality were very close. Gary and I knew this kid because he came from where we came from. So there were no fundamental conflicts between Gary and I as to how the character should be played. I guess probably the most important piece of advice I gave Gary was to throw everything away. Don't think about the significance of anything. None of this is important, because to Buddy at the time it wasn't. He was having a ball, and there was no profundity or deep social meaning or anything to what was going on with them. And I said, try to keep that in mind. Forget it. It's not important. None of this is important. You're just having a good time.
Well, to people listening now who haven't seen the film, that might sound really like unusual and like, what kind of director is this trying to make the film superficial? But when I was seeing the film, I really noticed that he wasn't trying to make everything like overly profound, which is another thing that I so frequently see in movies.
And it turns out stronger than it would be if he played it big. There's something about not taking yourself seriously that's really, it really speaks of reality.
Were there takes that were shown to all the performers, the musician performers, to give them a sense of how they were looking so that they could like see it and use that as feedback?
No, we didn't have time.
Uh-huh.
It would have been nice to shoot it with a combined video film system where you could look back at things and make adjustments and so forth.
So they never had a chance to see that? They
never saw themselves until they saw the film. They never played in front of an audience until that roller rink. That was quite it was more of an experience, I think, for the actors than it was for the kids. Now, these 16 and 17-year-old kids in the roller rink, they'd never heard root rock and roll either, except on a tinny radio. So for them, it was quite a shock to see three guys come out there and hit them with that real simple, raw rock and roll. But for the actors, to see those kids' eyes, get so big and them get so excited, and then the kids called for an encore that was not planned. I didn't tell them to do that. And that just gave the band, I talk of the three guys as a band because they were a band, it just gave them this incredible confidence that, hey, we are a rock and roll band. And the excitement level, you'd have to be an idiot to miss that. And you can't miss it in filming when it's that kind of real intense excitement. You don't have to create it. It's there.
How do you, as the director, deal with, I don't know whether they were actors or extras, the teenagers and adults who were in the roller rink in that opening scene?
Both actors and extras.
How do you direct them? Because they're in a big group. I mean, you're not working with them as closely as with Gary Busey.
Well, some of the shots are, carefully staged and set up shots for specific things that I knew I needed. But a lot of the really exciting shots come from the situation rather than from telling them to jump up and clap.
But they knew how clapping was done in the 1950s, where you clap and then you kind of roll and wave your hand to the right, and you clap again, you roll your left hand to the left.
Yeah.
People don't really clap that way anymore, but they did in the
Yeah,
late
well,
1950s.
those things, were choreographed and and told, but their excitement, the energy level was their own.
If you're just tuning in now, I'm speaking with Steve Rash, who is the director of the film The Buddy Holly Story that opened in Philadelphia last Wednesday. Did you do a lot of takes of the music performances, either for visual or for sound qualities of the performance?
No, we used multiple cameras to minimize the number of takes because it was live. Anytime you do another take, there's a chance that the tempo is going to move a little bit faster or slower. So we tried to do as few as possible. Now there were 4 or 5 complete takes on some of the sequences, but each one of those takes had 3 or in some cases 4 cameras running. So it's the equivalent of 12 or 15 takes.
Mm-hmm. A soundtrack record has, which we heard a little from before, we'll hear a little more later. A soundtrack record from the film has been released. Was that automatic, or was that something that you decided to do? I mean, did you know automatically that, of course, you have to have a soundtrack record for a music film?
I think it's automatic. You need desperately, in this age of marketing, you need a hit single to sell a movie of almost any kind. You either need a monster superstar or a hit record. And Robert Stigwood has been very successful in promotion through the radio stations playing the soundtrack album or the single, whatever.
Do you think that, given that Buddy Holly's records are still available, they've been reissued on record labels, MCA, I think it is. Given that that's still available, do you think there's any chance of making a hit out of Gary Busey's very good renditions of Buddy Holly's work, but it's not Buddy Holly, and Buddy Holly records are around?
It's selling. It's selling right up there with the original re-release. There's well over 200,000 copies already sold, which is not bad.
Are you surprised, or?
No, I think, I would have been surprised had I not seen how effective the film was. I think a lot of that is due to someone wanting to recapture, an effective moment for them in the film.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of other rock and roll films. You mentioned Robert Stigwood, who's the producer of Grease and Saturday Night Fever and Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and then there's also American Hot Wax, which I saw, I think, the first time I saw the Buddy Holly Story, and there's a scene in there where the president of the Buddy Holly fan club goes on Alan Freed's program, which I thought was a marvelous interplay.
Yeah.
Did you have any idea that when you started this film 4 years ago that it was going to be released right in the middle of a whole gamut of rock and roll
No,
films?
because I didn't think it would take as long as it did. I thought it was a 2-year process when in the beginning. It took so much longer to raise the money than we thought it would that actually most of these other rock films were started considerably after ours, and I think a few of them started because of ours. All through the process of trying to raise the money, we were doing as much promotion as we could about the Buddy Holly story. And I think that has a great deal to do with the success in selling the Alan Freed story. They started that considerably later.
Is there anything you had to do to protect the major companies who you didn't want to deal with, because you wanted to produce it independently from themselves, doing their own Buddy Holly story and coming out 2 years before yours, because they have...
The only protection is in getting independent financing.
Mm-hmm.
The minute you take money from a major, you give up some portion of control. The amount of control you give up depends on how much money you take from them. So that was our big battle all the way through, was not to have to go to the majors and say, I want to make a deal with you. To finish the film and then go to the distributors and say, we have this film we'd like for you to consider distributing, and that's what we did.
When we started talking, we were talking a bit about Maria Elena Holly, Buddy Holly's wife, and his parents, who all had to give permission to film the Buddy Holly story. What were their reactions when they saw the film?
They were universally touched, and that was the most gratifying thing to me. Even more so than the public's acceptance is Maria's and Mr. and Mrs. Holly's. Mr. Holly stood up at the premiere in Lubbock, and he said, "That's my boy." And some of the crickets who have seen the film were deeply touched by how close Gary got to the character. In fact, Nikki Sullivan, one of the crickets, said to Gary, "You got inside the man."
Mm-hmm.
Very touching.